Hello, Fantastic Beasts fans. I know you're all eager to finally discuss all the clues from Crimes of Grindelwald, and this is finally the video to do so. But if you haven't seen the film, click off now. Believe me, you'll want the element of surprise. I'm Susan Chapal with Fantastic Secrets Behind Fantastic Beasts to bring you the clues.
Join me and other Fantastic Beasts fans here on the Beast Chaser Forum as we uncover the secrets, discover what's coming first, and play along with Rowling's newest game. And make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification so you'll be notified when videos post and won't miss out on the next clues.
In my last video, I presented a spoiler-free review of the film. If you haven't seen that yet, I recommend you check it out first. I decided to split my spoiler-filled review into two parts because there's just so much to cover and I want to get to the newest revelations quicker. So for this first video, I'll cover the big revelations and ending first, then go back to the setup for the second video. I'll cover both what we're meant to understand as well as my interpretation. And I'm drawing on the screenplay as well. First up, there's a lot of angst burning in fandom over Minerva McGonagall's appearance. People are worried that Rowling is breaking canon, that she's offering up fan service, and basically that it just doesn't make sense. I disagree. I'm well aware that McGonagall is stepping out of her timeline to appear in this film, but I truly believe there's a strong reason for it. One that we've already talked a bit about in prior videos, but I'm going to circle back to this one at the end when it'll make more sense. The revelation of Queenie going to Grindelwald's side was not a surprise, but I still do not believe all is as it appears to be. As mentioned in a prior video, I think she was definitely drugged with that tea she was insistently served. The point is made in the screenplay that Queenie has drunk tea even as she refuses more. She sets down her empty teacup. We feel her slight awkwardness as it is instantly refilled by Rosier. Refilled. So Queenie has at least drunk one cup of tea, but she's feeling awkward. Something's out of sorts. Could it be more than being in a stranger's home? And in refusing more tea, is she saving herself from the total loss of her legitimacy power? I do believe her tea was drugged, and that the intent was to lessen her legitimacy so that Grindelwald could manipulate her more easily. Notice that he does not appear until after she's been served tea. That does not mean Queenie's not making her own choices at the end, but rather that she's making choices without the aid of her legitimacy, which she relies on so heavily. I even believe she's not aware that she doesn't have the legitimacy as normal. We get a clue of that when Jacob says to her, "Queenie, you gotta wake up." And yes, she's reading Jacob's mind, but he is very close to her and is repeating something that was said before when she did have her full legitimacy. However, around Grindelwald and his acolytes, I think her ability is muted, for now. Which leads us to the amphitheater. As Tina and Newt quickly understood on entering, and as we theorized before in a prior video, it was all a trap. Newt, Queenie, the family tree, it's all been bait. Grindelwald plotted well. The path was laid to bring the weapons he needed to him, Queenie and Credence, though Credence most of all. And to catch Credence, Grindelwald made sure to wipe out every other link Credence would have to discover his true identity. First, he had Grimson kill Irma Dugard, the servant half-elf, and perhaps the only living adult who could truly tell Credence what happened on that fateful voyage. Grimson waited in the wall, listening to what was said, and killed Irma at the precise moment of her revealing just enough, but not too much, of Credence's backstory. Just enough to play into Grindelwald's plan. Then there's the curious incident with the deadly parasite in Yusuf's eye. I think this was a critical moment in the plot and not just a get-out-of-jail-free card for Tina, Newt, and Jacob. As revealed in an earlier interview with Yates, Grimson is a magical exterminator who is known for his unscrupulous methods of trapping and killing magical beasts. He's the opposite of Newt. Surely he might have access to a water dragon. Could Grimson have planted the parasitic water dragon in a sewer near Yusuf to infect and kill him? Yusuf is trying to kill Credence, and Grindelwald did charge Grimson with protecting Credence after all. Also, remember that Grindelwald had the Lestrange family tree in his possession from the time Rosier and Abernathy snuck it out of the French ministry until Abernathy and Macduff carefully placed it at the Lestrange mausoleum. And not only is this to lure them all into the trap, but also it gave Grindelwald time alone with the record. Just think of the manipulation he could have done to it with the aid of his most powerful Elder Wand. Time to manipulate it into the revelation he desired. Also, about that family tree, I don't think Grindelwald manipulated this aspect, but the fact that the women were presented as flowers rather than with their names will keep us from discovering connections to the female line easily. Remember that for later. Then there's a key name here I want you to remember. The acolyte who helped place that altered family record of Credence's birth is Macduff. Macduff serves only one purpose as a named character in the story, and that is to place the record of Credence's birth for him to find. In Shakespeare's Macbeth, Macduff is the one man who could ultimately defeat the murderous Macbeth, seemingly going against the witch's prophecy. Macbeth thought himself safe because no man of woman born could harm him, but Macduff was, from his mother's womb, untimely ripped, and kills Macbeth. Coincidence? I think not. Rowling could be using the name to hint that Macduff will betray Grindelwald at some point, but I think there's also another key reason, which we'll get to soon. The bottom line here is that Grindelwald is hiding something critical about Credence's past and is intent on eliminating anyone who could contradict him. Leta was also taunted into her own destruction. I believe Grindelwald played her. He knew enough about Leta to play on her guilt. We see a clear example of how he did this just moments before when he played on the red-headed witch's anger to get her to set off the attack that killed her and would make Grindelwald look the innocent against the Aurors. He did the same thing with Leta. He played on her guilt and taunted her into sacrificing herself, thus eliminating another key witness. Irma, Yusuf, Leta. Grindelwald set out to eliminate everyone associated with Credence's history, anyone who could prove Grindelwald's story wrong. But with Yusuf, he failed, thanks to Newt, which means Yusuf is going to be critical in the next film. He must possess a key fact that Grindelwald is trying to hide from Credence. Grindelwald wants no one alive to contradict his version of Credence's identity, which is definitely twisted. But in springing his trap, Grindelwald suffered a loss as well. Not only did he lose the vial of his blood pact with Dumbledore, but he may have lost his skull pipe. Look at what the screenplay says about Leta. She points her wand at the skull in Rosier's hands, which explodes. Rosier is knocked backward, and Grindelwald is momentarily obscured in a whirl of chaos. I'm sure the loss of that skull would be significant for Grindelwald, but I'm not quite sure how. And how did Leta know to aim for it? But I'm more convinced now than ever that the skull belongs to a member of Grindelwald's family, perhaps someone he killed himself. And then we come to the final and most significant surprise revelation, the point the whole film has been building to, but was kept so secret in all the numerous trailers and clips shown. Grindelwald gives Credence a wand, then tells him his true name, Aurelius Dumbledore. First, about the wand. Credence now possesses a wand given to him by Grindelwald, not one that chose him personally, but it seems to work very powerfully in his hands, knocks a whole side off a mountain, just as we theorized in a prior video. I believe this wand is Grindelwald's own, the one he used before acquiring the Elder Wand, and I believe Credence's easy use of it hints at a powerful connection between the two men. To unpack this ending revelation of Credence's name, we have to keep in mind that Grindelwald lies and manipulates to serve his own purpose. Rowling has warned us about that before. In the screenplay, it is shown that Grindelwald carefully removes Queenie from the room before talking with Credence. He wants no risk of her detecting his lies. Rowling is very careful about her choice of words she puts into Grindelwald's mouth. You have suffered the most heinous of betrayals, most purposely bestowed upon you by your own blood, your own flesh and blood. And just as he has celebrated your torment, your brother seeks to destroy you. Your brother. Thanks so much to Suvi Holm for pointing out to me the ambiguity in this wording. Albus is never said. And look at what comes before. Have we seen any evidence of Albus betraying Credence, celebrating his torment, seeking to destroy him? No, quite the opposite. He sent Newt to try and save him. Grindelwald is lying and manipulating. But I think the biggest lie is regarding whose brother Credence is. And after a discussion with Suvi, who initiated this idea, I believe that brother to be Grindelwald. For evidence as to how Credence could be Grindelwald's brother instead, I want to go back to something Dumbledore said very early in the film. An obscurus grows in the absence of love as a dark twin, an only friend. If Credence has a real brother or sister out there who can take its place, he might yet be saved. This is new information from the first film, and it is critical. It hints at Rowling's key theme of love as salvation, and not only for Credence, but for Grindelwald as well. It also is a play on the brothers theme that is so strong throughout Crimes of Grindelwald. There is the strained love of Newt and Theseus, the recovered love of Yusuf for Leta, and then there's the bond between Gellert and Albus, who says, "We were closer than brothers." And out of their love, in essence, I believe Credence was born. Now this may be really far out on a limb. What if Grindelwald had an obscurus? But when he found true love with Dumbledore, he lost it. We know nothing yet about Grindelwald's backstory as a child, and I believe that to be deliberate. So in the lack of anything concrete, I'm going to speculate on what I think most likely. What if he was a lonely and tormented child, and out of that grew his dark brother, his twin, an obscurus? Considering Grindelwald's reputation for powerful and dark magic, this would explain a lot. And what if his experiments that got him expelled from Durmstrang were related to both using and controlling his obscurus? However, during that stumble with Dumbledore, someone for the first time finally touched his heart, a true partner of his mind and soul. And in finding love, he lost his obscurus. But in losing the obscurus, he also lost his edge of power. And when the relationship ended after Ariana's death, Gellert longed for that lost power, power perhaps even beyond what the Elder Wand offered. He sought to reconnect with his dark twin, but the obscurus had found other lodging, and he's been tracking it ever since. And now he seeks to use his lost obscurus in its new host to fight the only man who he believes can defeat him. After all, not only is the blood pact binding on Dumbledore, it's also binding on Grindelwald. He cannot attack Dumbledore directly, so in the language of duelists, Dumbledore is maneuvering to find his second, and Grindelwald is maneuvering to find his, which pits Credence against Newt. And just as Grindelwald left it to Caro to kill the innocent Muggle toddler, he will use his dark twin to kill the only person who ever touched his heart and left him weaker because of it. We were shown very deliberately from the first film that an obscurus can survive without its host. We saw it in Newt's case, and we saw it in Credence at the end. But how does it reform? How did Credence get back his body? In an interview, Ezra Miller said it was a very painful process, but none of this showed up on screen or in the script. However, Credence is shown with a baby chick from his second scene, and no explanation given of how and where he obtained it. We're meant to believe that his chick is a phoenix because he's a Dumbledore, and that is possibly true. But consider too, the only other time a chick is shown and mentioned in the film is when Newt shares the raven chick he's nursing with Leta, and the knowledge that the raven is on the Lestrange family emblem. I believe we're meant to connect these two chicks. But wouldn't it be a bit much to have both Grindelwald and Ariana as an obscurial? To be honest, after this new revelation of how an obscurus forms, I no longer believe Ariana was one. She had love. She had the love of Aberforth, and even if reserved, the love of her mother. Perhaps Albus didn't love her as he thought he should have, but he did love her. With this much love and companionship, I don't think Ariana would have developed a true dark twin. So if I'm right, and Grindelwald had the obscurus, and it fled him when he and Dumbledore bonded, how did it form into Credence? To answer this question, I want to revisit a prior video of mine that was mostly wrong, but had one important clue. I was wrong about one of the two aunts on the Lestrange family tree being at Hogwarts, but I believe I was right about them being significant. I still think one of them may have been Mary Lou Barebone's mother, the mysterious M. Lestrange, and would explain why young Corvus was sent to her care. But I think the other may have been Grindelwald's. We know pureblood families intermarried. What if Josette Lestrange married Grindelwald's father? Gellert would then be a Lestrange as well, and could explain why he has a white raven on his banner, which Kelly-El has been following the clues of for quite a while now. Consider, too, Credence's aunt, the woman caring for Credence on the ill-fated ship, played by a Swedish actress, Linda Santiago. Why? We haven't seen any signs of the Dumbledore family having Swedish ancestry, but Grindelwald went to Durmstrang, which may be located in Sweden or Norway. And the aunt on board seems very familiar with Irma. She warns her to leave. Perhaps they knew each other prior to the ship because the aunt was a Lestrange, or married to one. And perhaps that is why she is called Credence's aunt, rather than her full name, to conceal her true identity, an identity that would connect Credence with Grindelwald. Then, I want to compare the battle at the end of FB1 with the fight between Albus, Gellert, and Aberforth that lost Ariana her life. I acknowledge this theory is highly speculative, but until more clues are revealed, it makes sense to me, for now. At the end of FB1, we saw Credence shot from multiple auras. His body disintegrated, but a wisp of him survived. We are not shown how, but somehow his body and his Obscurus reconnected. We do not know how long this took. Compare this scene with what we know of the fight between the Dumbledores and Grindelwald. What if this fight broke out immediately after Grindelwald's Obscurus fled him? In fact, the blood pact could be the reason the fight broke out. If Aberforth stumbled into the barn as it was just finished, discovering the shining new blood pact between them, what if his accusation against Albus and his plans were based off witnessing that pact? If I'm right about Gellert losing his Obscurus as a result of his relationship with Dumbledore, that Obscurus could still be floating about during that time of the big fight. Then, consider, Ariana's life was endangered. Actually, all three Dumbledore lives were endangered. Could a phoenix have come to any of them at their time of need? And could Grindelwald's severed Obscurus have connected with the phoenix, saving it until it found a new bodily home? Going back to the end of FB1, the same thing may have happened with Credence. After all, there was a type of phoenix about when Credence blew up at the end of the film, Newt's Thunderbird, and we were very much reminded of Frank the Thunderbird and his connection with phoenixes at the beginning of the film. Dumbledore. Well, I've always felt an affinity with the great magical birds. There's a story in my family that a phoenix will come to any Dumbledore who is in desperate need. The phoenix, in 3 forms, Phoenix, Thunderbird, and Augury, has been quite prominent in promotional material and through the films. It has a huge role to play, and the Dark Augury is quite intriguing. Could Credence's Obscurus have been safeguarded by Frank until he could reform his body? But in Grindelwald's case, with his Obscurus having left his body still intact, it would have had to seek a new one. Could Grindelwald's Obscurus have harbored in a Dumbledore called Phoenix until it found a new home in an unborn child? The fight broke out at the end of the summer of 1899. The ship scene with the babies takes place sometime in 1901. No month is given, so there is the possibility that a mere 16 to 17 months separate the events. 16 months is long enough for a baby to be born and of the age of those on the ship. And here is where the Macduff reference could come into play. Macduff's unnatural birth could be a sly hint at another unnatural one that involved Credence being born with Grindelwald's Obscurus already attached. If the Obscurus had been a dark twin for so long of Gellert, would it not have sought out another of his blood to lodge into? Credence, then, would be Gellert's dark twin, and could explain why Credence is always drawn to Gellert. Not only that, He would be a living embodiment of that blood pact between Albus and Gellert, born because of the love that once existed between them, and making him a prime target for his brother's plans once Grindelwald's intentions of world domination became known, which could be why the baby Credence is being moved to safety as well on board that ship. Which brings us to the predictions of Tycho Dodonus. A son cruelly banished, despair of the daughter, return, great avenger, with wings from the water. Return, great avenger, with wings from the water could just as easily refer to Grindelwald in his escape scene at the beginning of the film. Perhaps that's why winged thestrals were used flying over the ocean, even dipping into it to allow Grindelwald to fill the coach. As for a son cruelly banished and despair of the daughter, again, we know nothing of Grindelwald's backstory, but his banishment may be the reason why he was at his Aunt Bathilda's that summer, and his mother may be the Lestrange daughter who, in her despair at losing a son, decided to give birth to another. So why would Grindelwald manipulate the prophecy and Credence's identity? What does he hope to accomplish? I believe it is Grindelwald who wants Credence killed, but for a very specific purpose, one even beyond killing Dumbledore. The power of Credence combined with Grindelwald's Elder Wand will be explosive. As shown in one of my very old videos, Credence is the magical equivalent of the atomic bomb. Grindelwald seeks to detonate him to destroy the Muggle world. And I think he succeeds. I believe Grindelwald will triumph and wipe out the Muggle world, except for a few beasts of burdens, and the Magicals will rule. But the destruction will be so catastrophic that magic like we have never seen before will be required to set things right. And this is where McGonagall comes in, as well as Flamel's Phoenix book. As I mentioned in a prior video, I think the Phoenix spell cast in the graveyard gives us our first hint of the original Order of the Phoenix. What I think we're seeing in the book Flamel shares with Dumbledore and Eulalie Hicks is this order, a secret society of alchemists from all over the world who safeguard the balance between magicals and muggles. One comment that struck me as odd since I first heard it was Flamel's, "I'm an alchemist and therefore immortal." It struck me as odd because we know he's not. He dies at the end of Philosopher's Stone. But I guess what he meant is that as long as he drinks from his elixir, he can live forever, and apparently does not even require food. He's a god-like being. And what powers might also be held by someone of such power? By a whole group of people of such power. Could this immortal Order of the Phoenix step in at times of great need to meddle in the affairs of mere humans, perhaps to even reverse time? Do you remember the hummingbird in the Department of Mysteries from the Order of the Phoenix? How it cracked out of its egg as it rose in the bell jar, only to fall away back into its egg, then rise and repeat. We saw a hint of this theme with Grindelwald manipulating the chick into an adult phoenix. Time is a cycle, and one small change can transform the course of that cycle. I believe toward the end of the series, there will come a point where this order of alchemists will allow one person to change one choice in the past, and from there, the future of destruction we will have already witnessed will be forever transformed. In fact, I think this choice will take us back to the end of the first film and explain that missing week hinted at in the change of newspaper dates that we talked about in a very old video. How McGonagall exactly fits into this, I'm not sure. But my guess is that she is caught up in this alternate timeline because of her powerful magical skills in transfigurations. It may be that an animagus in a transformed state can slip through the time easier than a human. I'll be looking for more clues and hints of this in the days to come. However, I have a feeling one key scene was deleted to keep us from guessing too much too soon. Jude Law said in an interview that there was another scene with McGonagall shot that did not make it into the final cut. I hope we get to see it in the DVD extras. With Rowling, you have to always pay attention not only to the clues revealed, but those withheld. In Crimes of Grindelwald, we did not get any hint of Grindelwald's backstory before Dumbledore, and that is deliberate, because once we get his backstory, we can start piecing together how it connects with Credence's. We also did not see how Credence got the chick. It may hint that the chick did not start out as a phoenix, but as the White Raven, linked to Grindelwald. I've got more to come on these birds, but it'll have to wait for another video. For now, I'm hoping Credence acquiring the chick was a deleted scene that we'll also see in the extras. So, I believe Credence may be Grindelwald's dark twin personified that he is seeking to destroy, but may, in the end, prove the means of Grindelwald's salvation. And even more now do I believe a theory I put out over a year ago that I felt was far-fetched at the time, that in the end, Credence will be transformed into Fawkes. Can you imagine the feeling of knowing that until his death, Dumbledore was accompanied by Grindelwald's dark twin who had found redemption and transformed into the gold of the Phoenix, the gold promised by the name Aurelius. However, while Grindelwald sees Dumbledore as the only threat that can stand between him and his plans for Muggle subjugation, that doesn't mean he is. There is another one, and that one is Newt. So what do you think? Do you believe Credence is truly Dumbledore's brother? And how do you think Minerva fits into the overall plan?
Please share your thoughts in the comments. Also, please check out my new fan shop on Amazon for books and Funko Pops and wands and all things Fantastic Beasts.